When people from the Western world refer to humans from sub-Saharan Africa, we generally use the umbrella term black to describe their racial makeup. This sort of implies that all Africans are one homogeneous racial group that all get along just fine, but this doesn't nearly come close to giving justice of the situation. And I will admit that I'm guilty of doing that too, but it's purely out of convenience sake. Now, if you go to Africa and ask someone what race or ethnicity they aren't going to say, oh, I'm black, just like 99% of the people in this country, unless it's one of the westernized countries like South Africa. I mean, there are thousands of different ethnic groups in Africa that I'm going to roughly quantify into a few different racial subgroups. Now, I like to fancy myself as a bit of an amateur anthropologist of kinds, but by no means am I an expert on the subject. I just have a lot of interest in it. Now, when you think of someone from Africa or someone that's black, what probably comes to your head is the Bantu peoples. The Bantu peoples populate pretty much all of West Africa, Central Africa, East Africa, and parts of Southern Africa as well. Bantu peoples all speak a language from a branch of the Niger-Congo family, and they all have ancestral origins in West Africa. Their appearance is generally the same across the continent, although those from the equator tend to be a bit shorter from those from Southern Africa. Now, if you've ever seen a movie like Black Hawk Down or Captain Phillips, and you look at the Somalis and you think to yourself, wow, those people look really interesting. It's because Somalis and other people from the Horn of Africa are actually quite different from the Bantu peoples that populate most of the rest of the continent. People from the Horn of Africa, such as Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia, they're classified as Cushitic people, and they generally have much different facial features from Bantus. They generally have slimmer noses, slimmer lips, and they may or may not have lighter skin color than the Bantu peoples. I've seen people from Ethiopia that are really light-skinned, and I've seen people from Somalia that are really dark-skinned. Now, for the most part, Cushitic peoples do not like to identify with the Bantu people from the rest of Africa. In fact, Bantu people, or people who look Bantu, are generally kind of looked down upon in Ethiopia and Somalia, and they prefer people with facial features that more resemble Middle Easterners or Europeans. Now, next you have the Nilotic people, who are probably my favorite group of people on the planet. I mean, look at them. They're just so interesting. They have such unique facial features. Now, Nilotic people number about 40 million and inhabit pretty much all of South Sudan, along with parts of Ethiopia and East Africa. Now, what makes Nilotic people unique is not only their facial features and their very, very dark skin. I mean, it's so dark, it almost looks like a dark, ashy gray color. But they are some of the tallest people in the entire world. Unlike most Africans, Nilotic people are really tall on average, about 6 foot tall, with the average male being almost 6'4". This is part of the reason why you see so many people from this region that are professional athletes like basketball players, track runners. If I had to guess, I'd probably say that they evolved that way because of the extremely high altitudes they lived in. Now, what's really tragic in recent years is that the Nilotic people of Sudan were actually targeted for extermination and genocide by the Sudanese government, and the Sudanese president is now actually wanted for war crimes by the UN. However, in 2011, South Sudan had an independence referendum, and surprisingly, Sudan was all for it, so South Sudan became an independent country. Now, in very stark contrast to the height of the Nilotic peoples are the Pygmy peoples of Central Africa, who are actually one of the shortest people in the world. The average Pygmy is only 4'11", which makes them much shorter than the Bantu natives of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and other Central African countries. Pygmies are thought to be a pre-Bantu population that existed there before the Bantus migrated from West Africa, and generally they're highly looked down upon by the Congolese population. In fact, many of the natives there even consider them to be subhuman and hunt them down for sport and even cannibalize them. So yeah, as you can see, all these so-called black African groups don't really get along very well. And if you want to all classify them as one monolithic black race, go right ahead. They just might not like that very much. Now, next up is one of the most ancient populations in the entire world, the Khoisan people of southern African countries like South Africa, Namibia, and Botswana. Khoisan peoples are considered a proto-population, which means that they haven't really changed much in the last few thousand years. Their facial features are generally all over the place. They can have facial features that resemble Europeans, East Asians, or other Bantu people. Next, we have populations that aren't really considered native by the Africans there, but might be considered black if you go to a country like the US. The Cape Coloreds of South Africa are probably one of the most mixed group of people on the planet. They have ancestry from the Khoisan, from the Bantus, from Europeans, South Asians, East Asians, and Southeast Asians. Now, you also have the island and country of Madagascar, which is one of the most interesting places in the world. I could do an entire video on this place. The population was believed to be settled about 1500 years ago, and what's really interesting about them is they're thought to be a combination of people from Southeast Asia and Bantu people from Southeast Africa. This racial group has sort of blended in and evolved to the past 1,000 years or so, and they now have a very distinct and unique look. Now, if you're from New England, you probably know about Cape Verdean people from the island of Cape Verde. They generally tend to be about 50% African or Bantu and 50% European, who are mostly Portuguese. Cape Verde is an archipelago, so the genetic admixture tends to vary from island to island, but if you go there, you'll see black-looking people with blonde hair and blue eyes. It's a very unique mix. Now, what's actually quite interesting is there are actually more people of Cape Verdean descent outside of Cape Verde than there are in. They mostly go to Portugal, other Western European countries, but especially the New England area of the United States, like Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. I'd just like to point out that nearly all of the Africans brought to the Americas during the American slave trade were Bantus from West Africa, which is probably why Americans tend to think of Africans as just one singular racial group that all look the same and all speak the same language and all get along just fine. Alright, I want to thank you all for watching. Hopefully you learned something new and interesting today. And I want to give a huge thanks to the Iconoclast, who recently hit 2,000 subs and gave me a shout out in one of his videos. And he had a bit of trouble pronouncing my channel name, which I don't really blame him because, to be honest, I don't think I've ever said my channel name out loud. So I'll just let you guys guess to see what it is. Nah, I'm just kidding. It's pronounced Masaman, like, you know, like Mason, but with man at the end. It used to be my screen name when I played video games when I was like 10 years old. I don't know, I thought it was pretty unique. But yeah, big thanks to Iconoclast. Go check out his channel. He does really good political commentary. And thanks for watching, everyone. See you next time.